Hello, everyone, and welcome to Qdabra's weekly webinar. Thank you for being here. We do these webinars every time we get inspired by you. And today's webinar, I want to thank Arthur at Synesys in Europe, who inspired this, one of the techniques that you're going to see today. Usually, we're showing a technique that is something new. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? And last week, we did a webinar where Alicia Prestowood inspired us. I think it's the third time she's inspired us this year. She inspired us to help with buttons. She said, wouldn't it be great if the button could fade away when we click on it? And we'd never thought of that. We've been going for 18 and a half years here, and we've never even thought about that technique. FormsViewer has been out for 7 years now. And so we do these webinars when we get inspired by you. And last week was buttons and lots of techniques. This week is also something that's pretty basic. It's links, it's opening forms. It's how do you change SharePoint views to open forms, and how do you update your views to make them less confusing to users. So we're going to show a bunch of short demos. Actually, we got Don here. Don, thanks for being here. Don's actually going to be my demo buddy today again, like he was last week. And before we get started, though, just a couple quick questions for you, and then we'll jump back to the slides here. The first question is, do you use modern, classic? Do you know? Maybe you use both. This is in SharePoint, obviously. Some of our customers don't even have SharePoint. They use FormsViewer standalone. So there's that. So it looks like about 2/3 of you are in modern and about 1/3 of you are in classic. Now the percentages have shifted, and we have I guess one person saying half and half. Okay, thanks for that. The next question I have for you is, do your users complain? And I've misspelled complain, so you can tell this is a live demo. Do your users complain about the new button? The new button, okay, great. There's somebody saying yes, they do. And we'll talk more about what this is in a second. So it looks like most of you are saying no, but there's one person that's saying yes. Okay. And thanks for those quick questions and answers. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between classic and modern views. They are different. We have to have a different way of updating the links for each one. We're going to show you each of those techniques. Then we're going to show how to actually replace the default buttons. So this default new button that is confusing one of your users. We'll show you how to get rid of that. In the classic situation, it's already gone, but Arthur's inspiration today was, well, why don't you remove this for FormsViewer extensions when you're updating the modern views? So we'll show you how to do that. And then we'll also talk a little bit about how to migrate list forms and give you some tips for handling them when you're migrating from an on-prem server, because there are some gotchas that you need to be aware of if you're doing that. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about this obscure issue list and how you can upgrade even these strange SharePoint list types to use FormsViewer to open them. And then we'll show going back and forth, upgrading it, downgrading it, and so on. So if you have any questions, there's a question. There should be in GoToWebinar here. There should be a little place where you can add your questions, and you can just click on that question thing, and then just add a question there at the bottom, and you can send it to everyone, or you can send it just to us privately. So once again, thanks for being here. We're going to jump right ahead into these demos here. But first, why do we care about these techniques? Well, it's pretty basic. You need to have links to open forms. If you can't change the links in SharePoint, they can't use FormsViewer to open the forms. That seems pretty obvious, right? But we also want to reduce confusion to the users, and this is where this new button technique comes into play. Like I said, we had been hiding the new button in the classic views, but for whatever reason, we forgot to do this, and it was a gap that Arthur spotted several months ago, and we're like, well, okay, we should fix that. So we'll show you how to fix that and reduce the cognitive dissonance with your users who are wondering why new doesn't work. And then if you have a user who is no longer in the system because their account was deleted, but there's still a form out there that has like a modified by, last modified by that user, and you try to open those forms, or you try to open any form from that library, we used to have errors on open. Actually, we still do, but we've just fixed this issue, and actually we'll show you this working. So we won't have any more issues where if a user leaves the organization and you've got a form that was assigned to them, then you've got an error. And I can go into some detail about why this was happening with Microsoft's protocol, but we ended up changing the way we were doing it to prevent that Microsoft error from occurring. So we worked around this error, and I'm really happy to report that that's been verified now. And we have an update for FormsViewer extensions and FormsViewer that's going out soon to address it. And you'll see that the test version in the demo today. And like I said, it's important that you handle data that was migrated on-prem, even if the users aren't there, but also if you have data that was from an old system and you migrate it using the SharePoint migration tool or some other tool like ShareGate or Metalogix has a tool as well, then you want to make sure that data continues to open just fine with your without having to modify things. And we'll show you one technique with the list forms that makes that possible. And yeah, and then there's this issue ID link that happens very rarely. If you've got an issue list, you can actually use a column called the issue ID to open the forms. And that's something also the FormsViewer extension supports. So without any further ado, let's jump into the demos. So the first demo we're going to show is with the classic UI with the expense report form that we've done with many times before. And so we have an expense report library here. And this is actually the expense report library that we use. We've actually got live data in here. You can see we're reimbursing our employees for medical expenses. But if I refresh this library, you can see that this is a pretty stock form library in SharePoint. If I scroll down, you can see I've got the classic experience here. And you can see this is the classic experience. If I click on one of these expenses, it's going to redirect and open in FormsViewer. Now, how did we do that? Well, we're using this thing called FV links. Specifically, we call it FormsViewer links. And you can go to InfoPath.dev and download this if you haven't already. So if you have a classic site, a classic list or a library, then you'll want to go to downloads here. And on the right, you'll see a bunch of things, training classes we've recently completed, all the content from those. But then at the very bottom, you'll see this installation and setup link underneath FormsViewer folder. And if you click on that and go over here to the files in the folder, you'll see that there's two things you want to be aware of here. One is this FormsViewer extensions, and we'll talk about that more in a second. And the other thing is this FV links at the bottom. So FV links is the technique to update classic sites, classic lists. You can see we haven't updated this since December 21st of 2020, so it's been about a year and a few months here. And this technique, we download this, and I'll make this part of the package for the webinar materials as well. We're just going to download this just like you would, and just show you what's in this package. If my computer will respond. Maybe it's taking a while to download it. There we go. Okay, so this is, we're going to basically just make this available into our webinar package for today. So let me do that real quick. Don't forget to do that. And I want this top one. Okay, so once we've extracted that, just open up a new file folder here. And we have a document that walks you through how to configure this. Now, SharePoint has these two different kinds of experiences, and so we have two different techniques for overriding the links. And the first technique is this classic one, which many of you are still using. So this is a pretty short document that walks you through it. But in order to do this, you have to upload this file, fvlinks.js, to your site. And typically you want to add it to your site assets. It doesn't really matter where it is, but you'll want to edit this first. So what you'll do is you'll open up this FV links in your favorite editor, Notepad++, or even just Notepad. And let's see if I can do that. It is a JavaScript file, but it's fairly small. It's just a 1 page or so, 2 pages, maybe 3 pages. So you don't have to really understand much of this file, but this is the file that we're going to use to upgrade that library to open the Forms and FormsViewer. And so what you have to do, the main key thing is you need to look at where it says required here, and you're going to need to add links in here to this, basically what it says here. This is the portion of the URL after the question mark when you open FormsViewer from the icon. So let's do that. Let's go back to our site. And so we're at the expense reports. We just opened it here. We'll go back to the library. And you'll go to the site contents. And scroll down to where your FormsViewer app is. There's a lot of stuff on this site. And then this is the link that you're going to paste into the FV links. And you want everything after that question mark, like that. And I'm just going to paste it in right like that. So there's a lot of encoded characters. You can just ignore those. Don't worry about those. You really want just that piece of the URL after the question mark. And then here, the second piece and the last piece we need to specify is the name of the template. So if we go back to our manage templates, we want the library to open the expense report form. And we've got a lot of forms in this demo library. But if I use this search, I can find the expense report one. I think there's a lot of expense reports in here too. I think I want Qdabra expense report. You look at the version number here for the most recent one, and there's 1447. That looks like the right one. So you'll just type in the same thing as that, just Qdabra expense reports. It has to match the name of the template in FormsViewer. But that's it. Now there's one other change that you can make if it's a list form, and that is down below here. I think it says here is list false, and this is in the documentation. You'll just change this to true if it's a list form. So if it's a library form, you don't have to do that. And then you can pretty much ignore everything else in here. It's just those two things at the top that you need to specify. And then once you've done that, you'll come back into your site here, and you'll actually upload those this fvlinks.js file to your site assets document library. So let me go back to that. And you can see if I open up site assets, we should already have it in here. And a lot of stuff in here. It probably is called expense report JS. It's probably one of these guys in here. JS, there it is right there. So let's take a look at this. I'm just going to download this. So you would just drag and drop your fvlinks.js in here. You can change the name of it if you want. Make it, you got a lot of forms that you're opening. You'll definitely want to change it from fvlinks to something else. And there's one more step that you have to do, and we'll walk through that here as soon as I show you what this is. So this is the one that was already there. And if we open this notepad, you'll see that this guy already has that URL specified, and exactly as I typed in, it's got the Qdabra expense report. So that's where the fvlinks is going to be uploaded for Classic. And then the last step is to go into the actual library where you want to specify that you're opening from FormsViewer. You need to go into the library that is going to use that form template, and you need to tell it, point it at that JavaScript file. Let me just see if I can get back to where I was. And this is an expense report XML form library, 98 expenses. So what you'll do is you'll go in here and you'll go to the gear icon on the right. You'll click Edit Page, and then you're going to click on the web part here. You can see here's the SharePoint view, and it's got this this little drop down here on the right that allows you to edit the web part. So go in here You click Edit Web Part, and then it's going to open up a task pane on the right, and you're going to go in here where it says Miscellaneous, and you're going to specify at the very bottom this JavaScript file. And you can see there I've got tilde site collection. So that basically the tilde says go up to the site collection, which is not the consulting site where we're on, but it's the root site. And then underneath that, you're going to go down to consulting, down to site assets, which is a folder underneath consulting site. And then it specifies the expense reports.js file, which we just opened. And that's when you make that change, you want to click apply, okay, whatever. And then those links will work. So if we replace this, if we just remove it, the whole thing, and click OK, we're going to revert back to the previous behavior, which was to open these links. Let's see if it can update the links here. Okay, so this is the previous behavior. Now look down below here. If you can see me highlighting these, down below you'll see the actual link that's specifying 372, 373. So now it's using the default out-of-box SharePoint link, which opens an info path, but you don't want this. So you want to override this. If I click on this, it's not going to open this form because the form has some logic on open that requires FormsViewer. So we actually upgraded that form type to the FormsViewer form. So what I need to do is I need to go back into the page and add that link back. Okay, where am I here? Where's my edit page? Okay, so I'm back here, and I click Edit Page. Scroll over, modify web part. Fix that broken link that was here. Now, you typically don't necessarily need to put it underneath your site collection. You can just put it underneath the site, in which case you would just have site here like that, and then you wouldn't need consulting. You just have site/site assets. But since we have put this up above one level, it looks like, actually, I think this is, so we could just do that actually, because this is not at the site collection level. So we could just do it like that, and this should work. So, tilde site/site assets expense report.js. So let's make that change. There's a few special like location function words like tilde site collection. So okay, so we done made that change. Now I'm going to stop editing and see if that actually took. And one thing to point out here that I think is key is that once this is updated, we still have the new button here, but this new button should open an info path. I'm sorry, it should open the FormsViewer, and you can see it is. So FormsViewer links always had this ability to override the new button. And what we're going to show next is that FV FormsViewer extensions didn't have that technique, but we've added it. I don't know why we missed it. I can also open up the existing ones, and you can see now this is opening in FormsViewer. So that's the first technique. Any questions on that? Once again, this is for classic library sites. The first technique is to show that we can update those classic library sites, and then we're going to show lists next, but we can update those to point to FormsViewer to open up the forms in FormsViewer. And it looks like we don't have any questions. Okay, I'm really disappointed in you guys. You need to ask a question. Just kidding. Don, are you there? We're going to switch to you next, and we're going to show this next technique. So once again, back here to, and before I leave this first technique, let me just go back to the how-to document that I mentioned. You can download from about that. We'll include it in the package for the training, the webinar today. And you can see I did everything in this. Basically, this is just a two-pager here. And you're going to modify the JS file, those two places at the top. add the URL, add the template name. And you've done this before, many of you have, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to open your forms. And then if it's a list form, you change that false to true. That's it. And then you just upload this to your site assets. And then you have to modify the web part, specify this JavaScript file, and you're done. Okay, so that's the first technique. Pretty straightforward. No real major gotchas there. And next, we're going to show you how to, actually, I think this is still me. I'm going to upgrade this library from classic to modern. And then we're going to run FormsViewer extensions on it. Okay, so let's do that. Let's exit the classic experience. And now you can see I've got, it's rendering the view, and it's going to give me links in a second for the name. And these links aren't going to work. As you see, if I hover over these, let's see here, it's not giving me a link down below, but I'm guessing I can't open these. Well, it is opening it still in FormsViewer. So the FV links is still, maybe we've already configured this library. We probably have already configured it. Okay, we probably did that already. But let me show you how to do that, because I want to show you how to revert it to, so that you can go back to InfoPath if you really want to. But here, more importantly, at the top here, you can see there's a new button and there's a FormsViewer button. And this is confusing to users. So if I click new here, you'd expect that to open up a new FormsViewer form, but it doesn't give you that option. So we're gonna change that, and we're gonna actually replace that with the FormsViewer icon and change the text for FormsViewer icon here from FormsViewer to new, so that your users aren't confused. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, first of all, we need to go to Site Contents. And for this demo today, I'm actually going to be using the test instance of FormsViewer, because we have fixed a few issues with this. And I actually think that I don't think we need to use the test instance. I think we can actually use the one that's in production. The techniques we're going to demo later will require the test instance, but let's try this without that. So in the site, you can see that we've got a library here for site assets. What we're looking for our site pages, and the site pages will have, so when you install FormsViewer extensions, let me just walk through this from start to finish. So you're going to actually install an app, and the app is called FormsViewer extension. So whenever you're uploading or upgrading your modern sites to open in FormsViewer, you have to install the second thing. This is called FormsViewer extensions. And this is a file that we make available on InfoPath Dev. So if we go back to our InfoPath Dev sister site here, you can see that you can download FormsViewer extensions here. And this was last updated very recently, actually. We updated this a couple weeks ago. And the latest version is 3.1.2, which we'll see in a second. And this includes those fixes I mentioned earlier, and the ability to replace the new button with the FormsViewer icon so that your users aren't confused. So you can download this, and then this includes an app file that you need to upload, and there's instructions on this. I'll go ahead and do that as well. So you can download this from Hightail. But before we do that, let's just walk through the technique here first. And the first thing you have to do is you have to find your FormsViewer app, and you can do it from your organization. You can see I've got a lot of different FormsViewer test apps here. But what I want is, once you've added the app, you've uploaded it to your tenant, to your site collection, you should be able to find it here. And it's going to be called FormsViewer extensions. So where is it? There it is. So you can see down below, it shows me the one that's added already. So you'll add this to your site. You can see this is already added, so I don't need to do this again. And then once you've added it, if you look at the instructions in that downloaded link, you have to download this, obviously, but if you look at the instructions in this, then we'll take a look at this in a second here. Okay, we'll wait for that to download. That's just, I think, a couple megabytes, and that should already be available. Run a virus check. Okay, so we just downloaded it there, and I'm going to extract this. to, I think I've already done this actually. So extract this to your folder. You can see I've already done this. I've got the FormsViewer extensions 2 and 3 here. I'm not sure why we're naming them like that. Don, do you know why we're naming it 2 and 3?
Jimmy updated it.
One's for on-prem and one's for online. Is that right? There's a difference between them. Okay, so this hasn't been updated since May 20th, but here's the documentation. This walks you through it. So basically you have to, a little more involved here. You have to upload the app package to your app catalog. You have to install FormsViewer extensions on your site. We just showed how to do that. Go into new app, find it from your apps or from the SharePoint App Store, and then add it. And then the third step here is you need to add a page that you can use for it. So let me show you how to do that. So here's our site again. Let's go back to the site contents, and we have in here what we call a site pages. I guess we have to go here now. It's not over here. Site settings and then site page, right? Why can't I find this?
It should be under site contents.
There it is, right there. I was in the right place. I just didn't have enough confidence. Okay, so here you can see we've got a bunch of different pages here, but one of them is called FormsViewer extension. So let's click on that one. And let's just verify that we have the right version. So FormsViewer extensions, once again, we're using this to update modern sites. And you can see we have actually even a more fresher roast out here, 3.1.3. So apparently Jimmy has updated it even more recently than what's on our download site. We'll get the download site updated. We'll include the latest with our package to you. And now I didn't mention this in the first demo, but if you have a library where you have multiple form templates, maybe someone would have thought, well, what do you do if you've got multiple templates like content types? Some forms, you got forms of two different types, two or more different types. How do you do that? And you can do that. You can actually set up these FormsViewer links to in FormsViewer. You go in and you can set up the multiple, what we call, I think, what are we calling these things? We're calling them, let me just go back to our site contents here. Let me show you this. I forgot to mention this as part of the first demo, is that you can set up the FD links and FormsViewer to open up multiple form types in one library. And the way you do that is in FormsViewer, there's a manage href associations. So you'll want to look at this. It says here, if you use multiple InfoPath content types in a form library, you'll need to specify them here. Okay, now this is important for Classic. For Modern, what you can do is you actually have the option when you open up this page. So you've added FormsViewer extensions to a new page that you've created, and that's in the documentation. And then you can click Configure Multiple Sites. Now, what this is going to do is this is kind of different from what I just mentioned, because instead of actually allowing you to open up multiple templates in one library, this is going to take the same template and syndicate it down to multiple subsites. So this is a really powerful technique that you can use. It's kind of what we call a hub and spoke model. You can actually have all of your forms at a hub location, so you don't have to update all the subsites. Right? So you got FormsViewer installed at your hub root site collection, and then if you've got separate departments that have separate sites underneath that, but they're using the same form, like say for an expense report, then you would click on this box and you would specify those subsites, and it walks down all of the subsites and it applies the FormsViewer extension change to update those links on all those subsites. And we've talked about that before in webinars. If people are interested in that, please let me know. I can show you where to go to find more information. But for this demo, let's just go ahead and specify the library. And I don't see the library that I want. Why is that? I'm on the wrong site. Okay, so this is, okay, so I had it open on two different sites for some reason. Okay, so here I am on my consulting site, and I've got FormsViewer extensions for Modern open. This is the app that's going to configure that library that I just showed you. I'm going to go down here to expense report library, and I get a bunch of options. Now, right off the bat, you can see there's a lot of stuff here. The typical link fields for a library are going to be the name, and you can tell by going into the library and actually taking a look at the SharePoint view and looking at which columns are promoted to the view. So if we go back into our expense report document library, expense report XML form library, let's see, expense report. I think this is the one. In here, if you go to this is taking a long time to load. You click on the gear and you go to library settings and you scroll down. There's our view, and you can click on the view, and then this is going to show you which columns are promoted to the view display. And you can see here anything that has a parenthesis where it says link to document or like for example, there's the name, link to document with edit menu, and there's the icon here. So both of those are links, but there's also a few others in here. And if it's an issue list, then you'll have issue ID. So I think that these names down below here are linked to. So you've got basically a bunch of name columns that are links that open the form. And so those are what you're going to override. So I would just say, just choose all of them. Now I don't know why ID is unchecked by default, but normally you just select all of them. And then what you need to do here is you need to copy that URL that we saw earlier in here. So this is your FormsViewer link. And it says you open the FormsViewer start page and paste in the URL here. So very similar to what we did with FE links. You need to go back to the FormsViewer app on this site. I think we were already here earlier, but let me go there again. And so, and this link is what you want. So you basically copy this link into this text box, and it should be the same as what I've already got in there. Let's just verify it is actually. I'm just going to copy this one from here, we already have set up, into Notepad, and we'll just side by side them. There's the first one, and then the one that I was just on. Copy this again, and put this down below, and you can see that they are different. So they are different. Where are they different? Well, this one's definitely got one more character. I don't see the difference in here. Maybe Don, you can see it, but it's kind of,
it's just the decoding.
It's just encoding, so they are exactly the same.
Yeah.
Good to know, because they should be the same. Does the encoding doesn't matter then, does it?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to copy this link. Let's just do this again, because we're going to run this. We're not going to use what we had in there before. So we're going to put in the new URL. And then the template name is Qdabra Expense Report. We know that's correct because we looked at it earlier. You can use multiple templates. So here's where you do the content types for the library. You put in multiple templates here, and you can add them here. And that's going to allow you to have multiple templates associated with that library or that list. Like I said, that's different from syndicating the links to subsites. So it's kind of similar, related, as one to many, many to one, that kind of a thing. But today I want to really focus on this new thing here, and this is additional settings. This is hide the new button. So this is something that we just added in 3.1.2. You can also hide upload because you're not going to need that for FormsViewer. And then here's where you want to change the text for the FormsViewer icon. And this is, we add this, Jimmy's really smart, because you want to have the option of putting in some strange character set, for example, Japanese, we'll see if that works. I haven't even tested this, but it should work. And when we click apply changes, it's going to give you this log here. It's going to run through, it's going to update that library, which involves updating the menu bar. And let's see if it worked. So I'm going to go back to my site. Contents, yada, yada. I should really have a link to this. And extensive report library. So we exited Classic. We ran FD extensions on it, and we're still showing the new button here. So what went wrong?
Maybe it needs to cache, so open up a new tab.
Can I just hit Control Refresh?
I usually open up a new tab.
Okay, so how long does the cache? I should have asked Jimmy this before the webinar. I thought that you could. So it really takes a little while, doesn't it? Oh, there it goes. Okay, so if you do a Control, hold down the Control key and click the refresh. The second time I did it, it seems to now have the new version, because you can see there's the Japanese new button or create button. And if I click on that, it should give me FormsViewer, which it looks like it's doing. So it's correctly configured to open up now that new link in FormsViewer. And more importantly, and you can see here, it's still got the cache going. It's still showing that new button, but then when it finishes rendering, it's gone. And that should be, once it's cached, you're not going to have that delay there to refresh it. Okay, but now you've got these links in here. These links should work to open in FormsViewer. And there you go. So that's how you upgrade your classic site to modern, and how you run FormsViewer extensions. And once again, this is all documented in our zips that we download here. We've got these two versions. Don, did you figure out what the difference was between FormsViewer 2 and 3?
Nope.
Let me, sorry to throw that at you. I didn't give you any heads up on that, did I? FormsViewer Extensions 3, let's just take a look at this document here and see if what's different about it. I think the difference is one's on-prem and one's online. And yeah, so this is the one that's online. So FormsViewer 3 is SharePoint 365. FormsViewer 2 is also saying the same thing. So I guess we need to ask one of our developers here why yeah, so this is, I think these are both the same. This just walks you through what I just did in FormsViewer extensions to update the library. Okay, so we're going over here significantly, and I appreciate your patience. So I just demoed these first two demos here, and next I want to quickly switch to Don. He's going to show how to update a list form. Don?
Mm-hmm.
1 second here. You should be able to share, but I'm going to make you a presenter.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so for this one, for this demo, I'm going to show you how to configure the FormsViewer extension for a list, similar to what Patrick did. However, we're doing this for a list. So as you can see here, I have here a list open in the modern UI. So if I click on this link, it should open up the list in as a list form, and this is not in FormsViewer. Okay, so if I close this, you can see that we have the new button here, and what else? Yeah, there's some upload for this one. To update this, similar to what Patrick did, however, we're going to select list and select. Let's just refresh that. Select resources. Select all, and this is already configured to set the FormsViewer URL here. That's included in the steps on how to configure the FormsViewer extension. And we have the suppress loading list items on form open. So the difference between the list and the form library is that lists will query on load and you can't stop it from the list form settings. So we can do that here by just simply ticking this checkbox. And for this one, you just have to specify the name of the template. So for the resources list, we're using the resources form and hide the built-in new button. There's no upload button, so we can just leave that as is. And for this one, I'll rename this to plus new plus and apply the changes. So it's finished saving. I'll grab this link here and open up a new tab. Let's see if it has refreshed. Not yet, so it still needs to cache. There we go. Now, as you can see, the links have changed. It's now highlighted to a different color. And we have this new button here. So if I click this link, it's going to open up in FormsViewer. And there you have it. And that's it, Patrick.
Cool. You added a little debug at the bottom too. Is that something that that proves that we have FormsViewer running? It looks like, yeah. So because it's QRules running in the background to get the input parameter. You couldn't do that in the out-of-box info path, which is still supported by Microsoft 10 years after they deprecated it here. But that first command would not even run if you opened it up in info path, right? Because this is online, doesn't have any code, QRules code in it. But FormsViewer includes all the QRules commands out of the box. There's no code behind that. Great, thanks, Don. One quick question. What about if you wanted to revert it back to info path, what will you do?
To revert back to info path, you just need to reset everything. So if I click on that and go back to resources, okay, I'll just remove everything here and click apply changes. I'll just remove the plus button as well. Okay, I'll grab this link and go back, finish saving, and open up a new tab. Again, paste the link and open it. This would still need to cache. Okay, so there we go. It's back to the old settings. So if I click on this, it's not going to open up in FormsViewer. Instead, it's opening up in the list form.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Alan. That was great. Now we've gone significantly over. Normally we're trying to finish these webinars in 25 minutes or so, and today is quite a bit longer. I appreciate your patience. So a couple more things to mention here. And we'll do this really quick, but I just want to make sure this is in the video for you to reference later. So Don showed this second technique here, this third technique actually, which is to update the list form to modern. And the real key thing today that we want to highlight is this new button is no longer there, so that hopefully your users won't be confused by that anymore. Now, in addition, when you're migrating SharePoint forms from on-prem, and I just got word from Jimmy, by the way, that the difference between the on-prem, the version 2 and version 3 of this is one of them is for on-prem. You can see this is actually right there in front of my face on the download page. FormsViewer Extensions 2 is for SharePoint 2019 on-prem. 3 is for SharePoint Online. Now the documentation, the how-to, is the same in both, and we have a case open to update the documentation for the on-prem one, not to mention O365, but they're pretty much the same steps. So we just have a few minor text changes that we need to make in that document. So just keep that in mind. So you're going to use FormsViewer Extensions 2 if you're on-prem, because the app is different. The app is, the most current version is 2.0 versus 3.1. If you're online, you're going to upload the FormsViewer Extensions app underneath FormsViewer Extensions 3 zip to your app catalog and then follow the instructions there. Okay, so sorry about that earlier. Okay, so the next thing is I want to quickly show one more thing, and that is when you migrate a site, like for example, a list form over, you might have users that don't exist on 365. And here you can see my username for this ID9 item here is correct. But back on the on-prem version, I was using a username that had was Windows authentication based, Pat Hall, right? So up until recently, if you tried to open these forms, they would fail to open. And that's because that user didn't exist, and we're querying the user profile service to get the user to verify that they're working. Well, that query technique causes an error if the user isn't there. So we're using a workaround to get around that. And now you can see that even though the username is bogus, it's still showing it there in the people picker. And just look at the Japanese mode turned on here. I'll switch out of that. And I can search for my name. If I search for Pat Hall, I'm not going to be able to find any person like that, and that's because I don't exist in the tenant, the online tenant. If I search for my name, I've got these two accounts, just one account for it, and I can just change that. So you can see the form is now opening with that old data, and it's respecting it. And that's important because you don't want to blank out the data if they open the form and edit it. You want to keep the old data in there for auditing purposes. So that's a new technique that we support now in the new version of FormsViewer that's coming out later this week or early next week. So this won't be live. Once this goes out, it'll be live, and you won't notice. You don't have to do anything. You'll get it for just without having to upgrade or anything, because it'll just be part of the production instance. The other thing that's worth mentioning here is, I think. So Don mentioned the FD skip on load switch. That's important for list forms if you've got previous data in them. You need to do that. You need to specify that. You saw how we hid the new button, by just checking that box and changing that FormsViewer icon text. And then the last thing I want to show here is this issues list. And see if I can find the issues list here. So here I have an issues list. The issues lists are slightly interesting because they have different columns. So in this issues list, you can see I've got an issue ID column. And if I look at the list settings, you'll see that when you have an issue list, you get these default columns: issue status, issue ID. Where is it here? I guess it's not even showing us the issue ID in here, is it? It's just baked in by default. But if I click on the view at the bottom here, we should see it. So there's two links in issues, issue ID, and then I think it's called, there's another one that starts with issue. Maybe not. I thought they were both called issue ID. But you can see the first one at the top here. Okay, it's issue ID without the linked item, and it's issue ID. So the issue ID is a column that is a link, and this normally would not work. But if we use FormsViewer extensions, the latest version, we can update even the issue lists, which are very obscure, and you probably don't have them. But if I go to Site Pages here and take a look at this FormsViewer extensions app, we should see that it correctly senses these two new list settings here. So I'm just going to go list. Got a blue UI now. And you can see there it is. There's these two different checkboxes here for issue ID and issue ID linked item. The only one that works is the issue ID linked item. If I go back to it, wrong place. Actually, is that the right place? No. You go back to the actual list. And the issues. And if I click on one of these issue ID links, it should give me the form in FormsViewer. Okay, that's the last demo. Thank you everyone for being here today. Sorry we went over. once again, we got these two techniques for updating lists: Classic, which uses FB links, JavaScript file, and Modern. Both of these techniques are available on Informath Dev. We'll make them available as part of the webinar kit. Why do you care? Well, it's essential for opening forms from your default SharePoint views. You can use a dashboard form as well. We recommend that. We've done many webinars on dashboard forms, including one this year in February. You can go back to those and take a look at that. That gives you more customization options. But you can also use SharePoint views, obviously, the default. You want to be able to customize the menu bar so that your users aren't confused. They click on New, they open up FormsViewer as opposed to the old technology. Any questions for us today? Once again, thanks for being here. Qdabra Forms is the lowest cost solution to upgrade your Informath Forms. If you've already got Qdabra Forms, you know that there's a lot of other cool features that you can add to them. And you've got us at your beck and call if you have a support issue, and you can download the apps from the App Store. Now, the FormsViewer Extensions app is not in the App Store. You need to download that from our site and upload it manually. Eventually, we'll probably put it in the App Store. Thank you very much for being here so long, and we hope you join us next week. Next week, we have a new technique that we've got a lot of new techniques coming up. Check out our webinar page, and you can see and register for these. Just type in Qdabra Education, and Google will give you the links here to our webinar page, and you can see our upcoming schedule. We've got quite a few items in the docket. This is what we did today. Next week, actually, we're going to skip next week, but the following week we'll have a customer testimonial. We may actually have we're very happy that we have a lot of customers who want to give testimonials right now, and we've got Greylock and Spindletop also that have agreed to do testimonials soon. So this may not be Spindletop, it may be Greylock, but we hope you see us here again at the end of the month, and happy spring. Hope your flowers are blooming. Take care. Thanks very much for being here.